Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and keep watching more details. Harrison Ford returning in the next Yellowstone spinoff can tell the story 1923 skipped. If Harrison Ford returns in Yellowstone's next spinoff, 1944, it could deliver a Jacob Dutton story that 1923 didn't do. The legendary action star indicated that if Yellowstone executive producer Taylor Sheridan asks nice, Ford might be willing to reprise Jacob in Yellowstone's next prequel, 1944. After all, as Harrison pointed out, I'm still alive at the end of 1923 Season 2. Jacob Dutton surprisingly survived 1923, as did his wife, Cara Dutton, Helen Mirren. Jacob made a miraculous comeback from being gunned down in 1923 Season 1, and he kept the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch from the hands of Donald Whitfield, Timothy Dalton, and Banner Creighton, Jerome Flynn. When Jacob's nephew, Spencer Dutton, Brandon Sklenar, finally arrived in Montana and did away with the Duttons' enemies, Jacob happily retired alongside Cara and passed the stewardship of the ranch to Spencer. If Harrison Ford were to reprise Jacob Dutton in 1944, then the next Yellowstone prequel could show Jacob's eventual death that 1923 skipped. 1923's final moments saw a time jump to Spencer Dutton's death in 1969, and the war hero reunited with his beloved wife, Alexandra Julia Schlaepfer, in heaven. Logically, Jacob and Cara Dutton had long since passed by the time Spencer dies. However, Jacob Dutton could theoretically still be alive in 1944 if Taylor Sheridan does indeed ask Harrison Ford to return nicely. Jacob is an ornery 80-year-old in 1923, and he would reach his centennial 20 years later. 1944 could show Jacob's miraculous 100th birthday and depict what an aged Dutton patriarch is like in retirement, whether or not Cara is also still alive. Jacob's death would also be a milestone event in 1944. Harrison Ford reprising Jacob Dutton in 1944 would also set a record for Yellowstone. Dutton males tend not to live to a ripe old age. The few known exceptions are John Dutton Q, Dabney Coleman, who was roughly in his 80s, John Dutton IOE, Kevin Costner, who died in his 60s, Spencer Dutton, and who dies in his 70s. 100-year-old Jacob Dutton in 1944 would make him the oldest living Dutton male, even if the next Yellowstone prequel depicts his death. Thus far, Taylor Sheridan has resisted bringing back previous headlining actors for his Yellowstone prequels. However, the popularity of 1923 naturally makes audiences want to see Brandon Sklenar, Michelle Randolph, Helen Mirren, Julia Schlaepfer, and Harrison Ford somehow appear in the next Yellowstone spin-off. There are ways to make it happen, and it would certainly be an event if Harrison Ford returned as Jacob Dutton in 1944. Universe expanding like the Montana skies it so reverently depicts. Fans have been buzzing about what's next. But no announcement has stirred as much excitement and speculation as the potential return of Harrison Ford in a future Yellowstone spinoff. After his acclaimed performance as Jacob Dutton in 1923, Ford not only proved his Western grit but breathed new life into the franchise's legacy storyline. Now, with whispers of his return growing louder, there's a tantalizing possibility on the horizon. Ford's comeback could finally fill in the chapters 1923 left untold. 1923 was a sweeping epic full of grit, gunpowder, and emotional depth. It introduced us to a Dutton generation hardened by World War I and battered by economic collapse. But for all its intensity, the series also fast-forwarded through several key moments in the Dutton family saga. Large narrative gaps stretched between episodes, with years seemingly slipping by without explanation. The result was a story rich in atmosphere, but lean on connective tissue. We witnessed the characters survive, suffer, and endure, but many of the pivotal events that defined their transformation remained hidden in the shadows of time. Harrison Ford's return could change that. Imagine this, a new spin-off set in the late 1930s or early 40s, where an older Jacob Dutton, perhaps hardened further by age, but no less formidable, reflects on the years that forged the modern Dutton legacy. Through Ford's gravel-lined narration, or direct action, we could finally witness the fallout from the events of 1923. What happened to the Duttons after Spencer's tragic journey across oceans? Did he ever return home to Montana? And how did Jacob and Kara Dutton manage to hold onto the Yellowstone Ranch through the Great Depression, land disputes, and the ever-evolving political landscape of the American West? These are the stories left in the aether, whispers of conflict, resilience, and loss waiting to be fleshed out. We never saw how Jacob and Kara rebuilt after the ranch was nearly overrun by Donald Whitfield's scheming. We heard of financial hardships, yet 1923 fast-tracked through those tribulations. A Ford-led continuation could dive deep into these years, portraying a family fighting not only to keep land, but to preserve a way of life as the world around them modernizes. It could be a quieter show in some ways, less frontier violence and more psychological grit, but it would be no less compelling. Picture this narrative arc. Jacob, perhaps now in his late 70s, faces another existential threat to the ranch. A new generation of Duttons comes of age. Jack's children, maybe even Spencer, returns, bringing generational tension and ideological divides. As they prepare to lead, Jacob reflects on the decisions that got them to this point. Through flashbacks and confessions, we see what 1923 skipped: betrayals, sacrifices, and the moral gray areas of survival. This is where Ford's gravitas becomes irreplaceable. Few actors can carry both the rugged physicality and the emotional weight required for such a role. Ford, a master of showing internal storms through clenched jaws and haunted eyes, could embody a Jacob Dutton shaped by time, regret, and unyielding love for the land he swore to protect. More importantly, this spin-off could bridge the crucial narrative gap between 1923 and the modern-day Yellowstone led by Kevin Costner's John Dutton. Fans have long wondered how the family transitioned from Jacob's era to John's stewardship. We know John inherited not just a ranch, but a legacy of blood, sacrifice, and stubborn pride. How that legacy survived, or how it fractured and reformed, is a story begging to be told. We could finally witness the gradual shift from raw frontier justice to political maneuvering. Perhaps Jacob, an old-school rancher with black and white values, struggles to mentor a new generation learning to navigate a world increasingly defined by legal battles, not shootouts. We could see the evolution of the Yellowstone brand, from survival to dominance, and the moral cost of that transformation. And what of Kara Dutton, brilliantly portrayed by Helen Mirren? If she returns alongside Ford, we might witness the quiet heroism of a woman who became the backbone of the Dutton family, managing affairs behind closed doors while the men rode out storms. There's room for her to take center stage as a matriarch in decline, training the next generation of Dutton women to carry the mantle she so fiercely protected. Even better, this spin-off could bring closure to Spencer Dutton's tragic arc. His story in 1923 ended abruptly, rife with potential yet unresolved. Did he ever reclaim his place in the family? Did his war trauma ever heal? A return from Ford would open the door to these answers, and perhaps offer the catharsis fans have craved since the final episode faded to black.